Boy kicked out by his parents returns 12 years later with his nanny and does something shocking. The rain was falling hard that night when everything changed. Daniel Martinez stood at the front door of his family's huge house, his small hands shaking as he held his school report card. The paper was getting wet from his tears. He was only 10 years old, but he already knew what was coming. His parents had warned him many times before. If he failed one more test, if he couldn't read fast enough, if he couldn't be the smart son they wanted, there would be consequences. The house behind him was like a castle made of glass and steel. It had 20 rooms, 5 bathrooms, and a swimming pool that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But for Daniel, it had never felt like home. It felt like a prison where every mistake he made was counted and remembered. His mother, Victoria Martinez, was a famous lawyer who won every case she touched. His father, Roberto Martinez, owned 3 companies and had his picture in business magazines. They wanted a son who could follow in their footsteps, someone brilliant and perfect. But Daniel's brain worked differently. Letters jumped around when he tried to read them. Numbers made him feel dizzy. Teachers called him slow, though they used nicer words that meant the same thing. The door opened, and there stood his parents, dressed in their expensive clothes even though it was late at night. His mother's face was cold, like she was looking at a stranger instead of her. Son. His father didn't even look at him directly. Behind them stood Rosa, the family's nanny who had taken care of Daniel since he was a baby. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and kind eyes that always sparkled when she looked at him. Rosa had taught him how to tie his shoes when his parents were too busy. She had sung him to sleep when nightmares came. She had sat with him for hours, helping him with homework even when the words wouldn't make sense. Daniel, his mother said in that voice she used in courtrooms, we've given you every opportunity. The best schools, the best tutors, the best doctors. But you continue to disappoint us. You're not the son we need for our family's reputation. His father finally spoke, his words cutting through the rain like knives. We've made arrangements. There's a state facility for children with learning difficulties. They'll take you tomorrow. But tonight, you need to understand that you're no longer part of this family. We cannot have our business partners and friends knowing that our son is. He paused, searching for the word, deficient. Daniel felt his knees hit the wet pavement as his legs gave out. The rain mixed with his tears as he looked up at the people who were supposed to love him no matter what. Please, Mama, Papa, I'll try harder. I promise I'll be better. Please don't send me away. But they had already turned their backs. Rosa rushed forward, trying to help Daniel up, but Victoria grabbed her arm. Rosa, if you touch that boy, you're fired immediately. Make your choice. Your job and your pension, or him. Rosa looked at the woman she had worked for 15 years. Then she looked at the little boy on the ground, soaking wet and sobbing. Her choice was instant. She pulled off her apron. The one with the Martinez family crest on it, and threw it at Victoria's feet. I choose love over money. I choose this child over your cold hearts. You may have given birth to him, but you were never his parents. I quit. She helped Daniel to his feet, wrapping her own coat around his shaking shoulders. As they walked away from the mansion, Rosa whispered in his ear, Don't you worry, Mijo. From now on, you're my boy. We'll figure this out together. They moved into Rosa's tiny apartment in the poorest part of the city. It was one room with a kitchen in the corner and a bathroom so small you could barely turn around. The walls were stained with water damage, and the windows rattled when trucks passed by. But Rosa made it feel like heaven compared to the cold mansion. She gave Daniel the only bed while she slept on an old couch that squeaked with every movement. Every morning, Rosa woke up at 4 to go to her new job cleaning offices. She worked 3 different jobs just to pay rent and buy food. Her hands, which had once been soft from working in the Martinez's comfortable home, became rough and cracked from harsh cleaning chemicals. But she never complained. When Daniel apologized for being a burden, she would cup his face in those worn hands and say, "You listen to me, Daniel. You are not a burden. You are a blessing. Those people who threw you away, they lost the greatest treasure they could ever have. One day, they'll see what I see in you. A boy with a heart bigger than any mansion, a spirit stronger than any storm." School was hard for Daniel in the poor neighborhood. The kids made fun of his second-hand clothes and his slow reading. But Rosa sat with him every night, even when she could barely keep her eyes open from exhaustion. She found different ways to teach him. When letters confused him, she turned them into pictures and stories. When math problems seemed impossible, she used beans and rice to make them real. Slowly, very slowly, Daniel began to learn. Not in the way his parents had demanded, but in his own way. He discovered he could understand computers better than books. When Rosa found an old, broken laptop in the trash, she spent her grocery money to get it fixed for him. Daniel spent hours learning to code, teaching himself from free videos when the internet worked. The languages of computers made sense to him in ways that regular language never did. By the time he was 16, Daniel was creating small programs and apps. He made one that helped Rosa keep track of her 3 job schedules. He made another that helped their neighbor, Mrs. Chen, manage her diabetes medications. Word spread in their building about the boy who could fix computers and solve problems with technology. When Daniel turned 18, a miracle happened. A tech company owner saw one of his apps online and was impressed. He offered Daniel a scholarship to study computer science and a part-time job at his company. Daniel wanted to refuse because he couldn't leave Rosa alone, but she wouldn't hear of it. "This is your chance, Mijo. Take it. I'll be right here, proud of you every step of the way." Daniel worked harder than anyone in his college classes. While other students partied, he studied and worked. He sent every extra penny to Rosa, but she always sent it back with a note saying, "Invest in your future. That's all I need." By 22, Daniel had graduated and started his own tech company with 3 friends from college. The company created apps that helped people with learning disabilities navigate the world better. It was personal for Daniel. Every line of code he wrote was for kids like him who thought differently, who learned differently, who the world had written off as not good enough. The company grew faster than anyone expected. Within 5 years, it was worth millions. Daniel's picture was in the same business magazines his father used to read. Headlines called him, "the young genius who's changing how we think about intelligence," and, "From learning disability to tech ability, the Daniel Martinez story." But Daniel never forgot where he came from. He bought Rosa a beautiful house with a garden, something she had always dreamed of. He hired the best doctors to take care of her health. He made sure she never had to work again unless she wanted to. But Rosa, being Rosa, volunteered at schools helping kids with learning difficulties. She said retirement was boring when there were still children who needed to know they were smart in their own special ways. Daniel's success caught the attention of many people, including his biological parents. They had followed his rise in the business world with growing regret and greed. Their own businesses had struggled in recent years. Roberto had made bad investments, and Victoria had lost some major legal cases. They saw their son's success as a chance to save themselves. 12 years after that rainy night when they kicked him out, Victoria and Roberto Martinez stood in the crowd at Daniel's biggest announcement yet. His company was going public, which meant it would be worth billions. The auditorium was packed with investors, journalists, and tech industry leaders. Daniel stood on the stage, confident and successful, nothing like the scared little boy who had knelt in the rain. He was wearing a simple suit, not flashy but professional. His eyes scanned the crowd and stopped when he saw his parents. They looked older, their expensive clothes couldn't hide the desperation in their eyes. When Daniel finished his presentation about the company's future, his parents made their move. They walked up to the stage, smiling for the cameras. Roberto grabbed the microphone before anyone could stop him. Ladies and gentlemen, Roberto announced, his voice booming through the speakers, I'm sure you all know the inspiring story of my son, Daniel Martinez. What you might not know is that his mother and I made the difficult decision years ago to practice tough love. We knew Daniel had potential, but he needed to find his own way. So we gave him the push he needed to discover his strength. Victoria nodded, adding with her lawyer's smile, everything we did was calculated to help Daniel become the success he is today. We always believed in him. We just knew he needed to believe in himself first. Parents sometimes have to make hard choices for their children's own good. The crowd murmured, some people actually buying this version of events. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, feeling like that 10-year-old boy again. Then he felt a familiar hand on his shoulder. Rosa had walked onto the stage, wearing the simple dress Daniel had bought her for the occasion. She didn't look fancy, but she looked like what she was, love itself. Daniel took the microphone from his father's hand, his voice steady and clear. I want to tell you all the truth about my success story. Yes, these are my biological parents. 12 years ago, they kicked me out of their house because I have dyslexia. I was 10 years old. They called me deficient, an embarrassment to their reputation. They left me on my knees in the rain and told me I was no longer their son. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed like lightning. Daniel continued, his arm around Rosa's shoulders. This woman, Rosa Hernandez, was our family's nanny. When my parents gave her a choice between her job and me, she chose me. She gave up everything to raise a child who wasn't even hers. She worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. She stayed up every night teaching me in ways my brain could understand. She never once made me feel stupid or unwanted. She showed me that intelligence comes in many forms, and that love is the greatest teacher of all. Every success I have, every achievement, every line of code that helped build this company, exists because Rosa Hernandez believed in a boy the world had thrown away. She is my mother in every way that matters. And today, I want to announce that 50% of my shares in this company will be transferred to the Rosa Hernandez Foundation for Children with Learning Differences. This foundation will ensure that no child is ever thrown away because they learn differently. The crowd erupted in applause that shook the building. Rosa tried to protest, but Daniel hugged her tight and whispered, "Let me give back just a fraction of what you gave me, Mom." His biological parents stood frozen on the stage, their lies exposed, their greed unrewarded. Security quietly escorted them out while the cameras captured their humiliation. But Daniel didn't watch them leave. He was too busy holding the woman who had saved his life with nothing but love and faith. Later that evening, after all the interviews and celebrations, Daniel and Rosa sat in her garden, drinking tea like they used to in the tiny apartment. "You didn't have to do that, Mijo," Rosa said, though her eyes sparkled with pride. "You didn't have to give away so much money." Daniel took her weathered hand in his, remembering all the times those hands had wiped his tears, had helped him hold a pencil, had worked until they bled to give him a chance. "You gave me everything when you had nothing, Mom. Money is the least I can give back. You taught me that success isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the kindest, the most persistent, and never giving up on people, especially yourself." As the sun set over the garden, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Daniel thought about that rainy night 12 years ago. His biological parents had meant to destroy him when they kicked him out. Instead, they had freed him to find his real family, his real strength, and his real purpose. The boy they had called stupid had built an empire. The child they had thrown away had become a beacon of hope for millions of kids who thought differently. And the nanny they had dismissed had become the most important person in the technology world, not because of what she knew about computers, but because of what she knew about love. The next morning, newspapers around the world carried the story with the headline, "Boy kicked out by his parents returns 12 years later with his nanny and does something shocking." But for Daniel and Rosa, there was nothing shocking about it at all. It was simply the truth that family isn't about blood or money or reputation. Family is about who shows up when the rain is falling, who holds your hand when the world calls you worthless, and who sees diamonds where others see stones. Years passed, and the Rosa Hernandez Foundation helped thousands of children with learning difficulties find their own paths to success. Some became artists, others musicians, some teachers, and yes, some even became tech innovators like Daniel. Each one carrying the same message Rosa had given to Daniel that night in the rain. You are not broken. You are not deficient. You are exactly who you're supposed to be, and that is more than enough. Daniel never spoke to his biological parents again, though he heard through others that they had lost everything in bad business deals and legal troubles. Sometimes karma works in mysterious ways, or maybe it's just that when you throw away love for reputation, you end up with neither. But Daniel didn't waste time thinking about them. He was too busy living the life Rosa had made possible, surrounded by the family he had chosen and who had chosen him back. Every night before bed, no matter how busy or important his schedule, Daniel called Rosa. And every call ended the same way, with Rosa saying, "Buenas noches, mijo. Dream big." And Daniel responding, "Good night, Mom. Thank you for teaching me how." The story of Daniel and Rosa became legendary in the business world, but more importantly, in the hearts of parents and children everywhere. It reminded people that sometimes the most shocking thing you can do is simply tell the truth, honor those who truly loved you, and prove that success is meaningless without someone to share it with. Teachers began using their story in classrooms to show that there are many kinds of intelligence. Parents learned to see their children's struggles not as failures but as different paths to success. And children who felt different, slow, or not good enough learned that they might just be preparing to change the world in ways nobody expected. Daniel often spoke at schools, always bringing Rosa with him. She would sit in the front row, beaming as he told their story. And when kids asked her what made her choose Daniel that night, she always gave the same answer. "I didn't choose him. Love chose us both." When you see a child in need, you don't think about what you might lose. You think about what they might become if someone just believes in them. Daniel didn't need perfect parents. He needed someone who would stay when the storm came. And staying, that's the easiest choice I ever made. In the end, the boy who was kicked out for being dumb revolutionized how the world thinks about intelligence and learning. The parents who valued reputation over love lost both. And the nanny who chose a child over comfort gained a son who changed the world. But if you asked Daniel what his greatest achievement was, he wouldn't mention the company, the billions, or the headlines. He would point to a picture on his desk of him and Rosa in that tiny apartment, both of them smiling over a broken laptop, unaware that they were about to prove that love is the most powerful force in the universe. It can turn rejection into triumph, poverty into purpose, and a boy the world discarded into a man who lifted others up. Because that's what Rosa taught him that night in the rain when she chose him over everything else. That being chosen by love when the world rejects you is the beginning of every great story. And their story, the story of a boy and his nanny who became his mother, would inspire generations to come to look beyond labels, beyond limitations, and see the extraordinary in what others call ordinary. The Martinez mansion still stands in the rich neighborhood, sold years ago to pay off debts. Sometimes people drive by and point, telling the story of the parents who threw away a treasure because they couldn't see past their own prejudice. But across town, in Rosa's garden, flowers bloom year-round, tended by the woman who knew that children, like plants, need patience, care, and unconditional love to reach toward the sun. And somewhere in the world, right now, a child who thinks differently is being told they're not smart enough, not good enough, not worthy enough. But because of Daniel and Rosa's story, someone who hears those cruel words will remember that the boy who was kicked out in the rain became the man who made it pour blessings on everyone who had been told they weren't enough. And they'll know that their story isn't over. It's just waiting for someone to believe in them the way Rosa believed in Daniel. Or better yet, it's waiting for them to believe in themselves.